Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a review, and it is a review of a fragrance that has been a long time coming. It is from the house of Versace, and it is called Versace Man. Now, sorry that I sound like Marge Simpson today, but I am getting over whatever the hell I'm getting over. And so my voice is a little crackly, but I think we can kind of press on and finish this review. I've been wearing Versace Man today as my scent of the day. And it's a fragrance that I've probably given, I don't know, 5-10 mils worth of wear. And Versace Man is one of those designers from the past. Came out in 2003. It is long discontinued, but it's just one of those fragrances that just speaks to me. So I won't say it's the best Versace fragrance because I think that's probably reserved for Versace versus Uomo, as far as I'm concerned. But this is kind of going back to the days where Versace had something going. They had some momentum, if you will. Instead of now, they're just doing Eros and the stupid flankers and all that stuff, right? And I annihilated Eros on a review. So if you want to watch a negative review, there's one for you to check out. So I think Versace as a brand would be much more successful if they got back to doing the type of perfumery that they were doing in 2003. Cool bottle too, by the way. We'll talk a little bit about this. So let me read you the blurb, which is crazy. It's I don't think it's a very good blurb, and it can't be a complete blurb. But Fragrantica keeps some of kind of the old things that were written, and so here's what they say: Versace Man is an elegant fragrance created for charismatic and temperamental men. Okay, I'll buy that. But then it kind of goes off the rails. It says it has a certain Latino vibe to it due to its tobacco note in its oriental surroundings. I have no idea where they're going with that. The perfumer is Domitille Michalon-Bertier, who I can't say I know much of her work other than it was a fragrance she did for Amouage in 2020, I think, called Crimson Rocks, maybe. Outside of that, I really don't know much else of her work, okay? And so here's the thing. This is a 21-year-old fragrance, okay? It seems like a dinosaur based in sort of modern, the way modern designers are releasing fragrances. This type of DNA would never fly today. There's absolutely zero chance that this would be put out nowadays as a fragrance by Versace. So this is going to be a discontinued gem fragrance review. And if you twisted my arm and you sort of said, Ramsey, give me some similarity. Give me maybe a fragrance or two that is in the ballpark of this. The only thing that I could think of came out 1 year later, and it's from the house of Escada, and it's called Magnetism. And I actually have a review on the channel of this. So if you want to check this out, you can. Both have that purple hue to them, if you will. And so my guess is that this probably, in one way or another, heavily influenced this. Both of these are discontinued, but when people come asking me questions about this from my old video, I will point them to this. Now, it's not a one-for-one, but they do definitely remind me of each other. Escada Magnetism is much heavier on the ambers and the resins and the Tolu balsam, and it has a little bit of that like purple soda smell in the beginning, which you just don't get in Versace Man. And the other thing is Escada Magnetism for men doesn't have any tobacco. And this doesn't have any leather technically, although there are some leathery aspects of this that remind me of this, and there are some tobacco-y, smoky aspects of this that remind me of this. So even though this has no leather, even though this has no tobacco, they will remind you of each other, if that makes sense. Also, when a fragrance comes out 1 year later, when the fragrances are released is a really telltale sign. Sometimes if you find two fragrances from the same year or just a year apart, and they're sort of playing in the same ballpark, you'll sense the similarities, okay? So let me read you the note listing, and then we'll talk a little bit about Versace Man from 2003. So I'm going to read this off of my bottle since there's actually a tester bottle. There's the note listing if you want to pause it and check that out. But the note listing is amazing. So neroli, bergamot from Calabria, angelica flowers, black pepper, saffron, cardamom, amber, living tobacco leaves, labdanum cysts, and cashmere wood. Okay, so it is olfactive family. It's listed as a woody, spiced oriental. Okay, I got this from Le Parfume, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they still have bottles. We'll talk about that kind of as we get towards the end. So here's the thing. I would probably describe this as a tobacco-based scent first. Actually, I think I'm going to do a fresh spray because I have a really old dry down here, like 12 hours. I think it's pretty much gone. So I'm going to do a fresh couple sprays here. Let it sit for a minute. About 1 or 2 hours here. I did just reapply before this video. Now, I wouldn't say that it's a traditional tobacco-based fragrance, because this is a fragrance that, for a designer, I think it takes a lot of very quick, sharp, immediate sort of turns, and there's a lot of jagged lines in the way that it smells. So if you take a look at the bottle, these little jagged lines give you an idea of kind of what I'm talking about. The bottle represents it really brilliantly in that there are these little sharp turns in the fragrance where, you know, you pick up little bits and pieces, and the sharpness is brilliant. So now specifically, my tester bottle says living tobacco leaves, as I stated. Tobacco leaves can have this sort of velvety, soft, woody, smoky, specifically smoky. And in this case, I think there's even leathery components to the tobacco leaves, which is probably where you get that very strange reminder of magnetism for men, because of the leathery components. Interestingly enough, if you can go on Google and pull up an actual picture of Versace Man's packaging, which I don't have because this is just a tester, but if you can go on there and, excuse me, pull up the box, you will see that there is this leathery, almost like snakeskin looking packaging, which is, I think, hinting at the leathery aspects of the tobacco and the labdanum, which really work together beautifully here. So I really think you could never hope for a designer fragrance house to put out something so beautiful today. You're just not seeing this type of perfumery in designer fragrances. So let me tell you what it is not. Okay, so I mentioned tobacco. Instantly, when most people think about tobacco, they're going to start thinking about syrupy, sweet, cherry, pipe tobaccos. You know, think of something like Pure Havane. It is not that. Okay, this is the exact opposite type of tobacco from something like this. If you're thinking Naxos, if you're thinking Pure Havane, it is the exact opposite of that. It doesn't do that at all. It doesn't have that ultra syrupy sweet. There is a little bit of sweetness, but I think it comes from something else. And so don't think tobacco dripping with honey. Don't think honey tobacco by Guerlain or anything like that. It's not Pure Havane. And that's one of the reasons that I actually really love Versace Man, in my opinion, is that they stayed away from the easy path, okay? They easily could have added thick, syrupy warmth of honey, but this doesn't go down that path at all. And what it does, though, is it ends up turning into this ambery, oriental style tobacco fragrance later into the dry down. But in the beginning, in the top, that's where the fragrance really differentiates itself to me, because that's where you get things like Angelica, which basically give the fragrance this very green, fresh, like I just did the fresh spray. I'm getting a lot of the Angelica flowers, as they say. I'm getting a lot of the Angelica flowers here. And it basically is going to add this little bit of this sort of green freshness along with Calabria from Bergamot, okay? Or Bergamot from Calabria, excuse me. So the few notes in the top that you're going to smell instantly will make you realize you're not just sniffing a traditional syrupy honey tobacco fragrance, okay? The Angelica, the Calabrian Bergamot are two that you're going to get right away. Now, the Angelica also does something here in that it adds a little bit of this musky, spicy twist, okay? There's more spices to come, but one of the reasons that I love Angelica, and one of the reasons I would probably say Angelica is my favorite green note, followed by Galbanum, is Angelica adds this almost like earthy, rooty aspect. And in my head, I can almost see this sort of, you know, tobacco growing in this earthy, rooty soil, thanks to the feeling of the Angelica. It basically gives the fragrance that green sort of freshness in the beginning, okay, when you first spray. and I'm getting it right now. It's absolutely beautiful for a designer. And if you love things like Royal Oud, I should have grabbed some cough drops before I started this, but if you love things like Royal Oud or French Lover by Frederic Malle, I would urge you to check this out. This is a very underrated Angelica fragrance, okay? It makes the top of the fragrance just feel very fresh, like you're smelling the fresh tobacco leaves growing in the fertile soil that's been tilled. And even though the tobacco in this fragrance doesn't smell like that, doesn't smell like you're getting sort of the greenery, the Angelica in the beginning almost gives you the illusion that you are, if you will. It's really beautiful, okay? Now, they basically enhance the vibrancy of the opening with two other ingredients. The first is black pepper. The second is neroli, okay? And as I discussed in my previous video that I've done, this is not a top 10 neroli if you want to check that out. But neroli is a very expensive ingredient. It's basically extracted using steam distillation and smells much, much greener than, much greener in execution than something like orange blossom, okay? It can still have a bit of the slight soapy freshness of orange blossom, but it smells much, much greener in comparison, okay? And so that's the feeling. It really adds to, the neroli adds to a little bit of the soapy freshness. And when you combine it with the pepper, the black pepper, it really works wonders in doing those little sharp, jaggedy edges I was talking about earlier. The black pepper just adds to the explosion of the sharp, jaggedy edges that I use the bottle as a great example. And if you just imagine black peppercorns, but imagine them like exploding. So imagine almost like popcorn in a bag, but replace it with black peppercorns. And at first, the first couple minutes or first minute or so in the microwave, lots of them are kind of exploding. And then as it gets closer and closer to the end of the 2 minutes, less and less kernels pop. Think of the popcorn bag analogy. That is kind of what the scale of the fresh notes in Versace Man kind of feel like. The diffusiveness of this, the diffusion scale, if you will, of the very sharp green, peppercorns kind of exploding, contrasts beautifully with what the fragrance turns into later, which is sort of that oriental style ambery tobacco, okay? And if you can just keep that image in your head of the popcorn bag with the kernels popping, those kernels, of course, representing the fresher notes. And I would say if you're a tobacco lover, right, you will notice that even though I'm mentioning a lot of the green, peppery spices, the soapy neroli, within the first minute or two of this being on your skin, you will say, this is a tobacco fragrance. This is a tobacco fragrance. It is a very unique tobacco fragrance. It's kind of put into a shawl and wrapped up and dressed up differently than maybe most tobacco fragrances you'll smell nowadays, but it is a tobacco fragrance through and through, okay? You will pick that out in the first minute or two of it being on your skin. So what the neroli, what the, bergamot from Calabria, what the Angelica flowers and the black pepper add is they basically add this very energetic, very cheerful opening in a way. Sort of starts to get, what ends up happening as the fragrance continues to dry is that very energetic opening starts to get cut into, if you will, as we slide down that diffusive curve, as less and less of those kernels, those black pepper kernels pop, and what starts to cut into the fragrance outside of the tobacco, which you get almost instantly, even though it's a base note, is you start to get this amber accord, which is usually made up of things like labdanums and vanillas and maybe myrrh or tolu balsam or whatever ingredients the perfumer used to create this amber accord. You're going to get this definitely oriental amber accord that smells very modern, smells very contemporary, because you basically get this spice, which is cardamom, and here it adds this cooling effect with which otherwise it smells like a very warm fragrance. Once you get past that energetic, green, kernels popping, black pepper kernels popping, it turns into a very warm fragrance. Think of Magnetism. If you smelled Magnetism, you know what I'm talking about. There is definitely this warmth. And because sometimes it smells warm, the cardamom, to me, cardamom's weird because sometimes cardamom can be like a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside of an enigma kind of thing. Sometimes it smells cooling, sometimes it smells warm. Here, I think the amber and the cashmere wood, which we'll get to later, adds warmth to the fragrance. Think like a cashmere sweater, right? Warmth. But the cardamom adds this little bit of a contrast, a cold, cooling spice. Feels very crisp. And when you take that crisp sharpness from the cardamom and you take the very sharp feeling of the touches of angelica, the soapiness of the neroli, you get such a very unique tobacco fragrance. I don't think I've ever smelled a tobacco fragrance that quite does what Versace Man does. Now, once we reach the heart of the fragrance, the cardamom along with the saffron is a very interesting touch here because the saffron almost gives it that kind of chemical smell, sandy chemical smell, which feels very Middle Eastern in execution. And it's funny because now in 2024, you almost never see saffron without an oud note attached to it in some way or another. But before the oud craze, before Tom Ford's oud wood changed everything, you used to see saffron used in a much more authentic and I would say inventive ways. Versace Man is one such example. Like if you want to see how saffron was used before, now it's just boringly constantly paired with oud. This is one fragrance to definitely check out. Okay, so and it's just such a beautiful, vibrant smelling creation. That's why I say it smells like a Middle Eastern scent. Lots of colors, colorful, energetic, explosive is how the fragrance smells. Actually, if you look at the box on top of that leathery snakeskin pattern I was talking about earlier, I wish I had the box. I only have a tester box because of what I ended up getting. But there was this holographic color all over the snakeskin leather, and the packaging is just spot on because I mentioned sort of the vibrancy of this. The colorful explosion, the holographic color all over the box is a perfect representation of that. They did a hell of a job with the packaging. Now, I've been focusing so much on the heart and the top of the fragrance because that is really what makes this, to me, a very unique creation, okay? You will not find this type of creativity in modern designer fragrances today, but the base of the fragrance is kind of where the soul of Versace Man lies. Now, when you think of tobacco fragrances and you think of Versace, probably one fragrance instantly comes to mind, and that is Versace The Dreamer from the 1990s, 96, I think, give or take. But what's interesting is Versace Dreamer focuses on tobacco flower, which is different, whereas here it's tobacco leaves. But you can see probably in 2003, they wanted to kind of stay true to a bit of what they were known for. And so they decided to focus on the tobacco leaves. And according to the back of my bottle, as I said earlier, it says living tobacco leaves, which sounds like Versace is doing some sort of strange experiment to keep the tobacco leaves alive in the bottle or something. Another funny thing that they put on the back of the bottle is labdanum cysts, which sounds like some sort of strange medical ailment you do not want. You do not want to get the labdanum cysts, I can tell you that. But I will say the base is kind of where the soul of Versace Man lies because that is where that smoky, slightly sweetened tobacco and amber blend kind of just join together so beautifully. And you'll get it from the very beginning. I mean, you will get touches of the amber, touches of the tobacco from the very beginning. I would wear this over the Dreamer personally. Now, to be fair, this bottle of the Dreamer is a modern bottle. It's not a vintage. So I've never smelled the vintage, so I couldn't discuss the differences. But I love what Versace did here. In my opinion, I think it's a really shame. It's a real big shame that they discontinued this. You get that balmy, ambery sort of smell as it continues to dry down, along with the tobacco. It's just simply gorgeous. I wore this today. It's August 25th here in Texas, so it's still in the upper 90s, okay? It smelled beautiful, but I've worn this in the cold weather in winter. I've worn it all year round. You can wear this in any weather. There's nothing to stop you from wearing it all throughout. I think the Angelica green neroli just makes this so versatile in the top. Now, downsides. If you are into fragrances in a way where you've kind of made the dive into smelling artisanal fragrances and all that good stuff, if you've smelled the Iris Ladores and all that good stuff, the Bortnikoffs and the Sherwoods and the Ensar Ouds and all that stuff, right? going back and smelling some of these designer fragrances, you're going to pick out the fact that there are some very chemical smelling touches. Now, saffron does give that off sometimes, but there's other things in here that I picked out that I thought smelled chemically, and or you could maybe even say synthetic. Okay, it's hard to go back to these designers sometimes and not pick up that synthetic type smell once you've got your nose on some of the quote unquote artisanal fragrances. But I will say this, it does not stop me from enjoying this fragrance. I wore it today as my scent of the day. I really, really loved it. I think that if designer perfume just got back to what it was doing 20 years ago, they don't even need to take a step forward. Just get back to what they were doing back then. They would be so much more successful. Now, second downside, price. I think I got my bottle from Le Parfumé, and when I bought it, I think I paid around $100 for 100 mil. $1 per mil is fair. You know, I know that you used to be able to find these at discounters for 20 or $30 for the longest time. And now there's a 30 mil bottle on Le Parfumé I was just looking at that's $115. Not bad if you want to get your nose on it for 30 mils. And if you have a big collection, sometimes that's perfect. But if you do want the 100 mil bottle, it's going to be anywhere between 175 and 300. I actually saw a guy hoping and praying someone's stupid enough to pay him $575 for 100 mil and a body wash or something, which is just pain and suffering. So price, as with most of the discontinued fragrances, can be tough. But if you look around and you're patient, you know, you can still find this one for a very reasonable price. It's one that for whatever reason just has continued to fly under the radar, maybe because enough people don't talk about it. And I will say this, even though I have no proof of this, I think that this is one of the inspirations for Versace Pour Homme Oud Noir. Now, the bottle is Versace Pour Homme, not Versace Man. Okay, so the bottle is something different. But if you look at the actual note listing of Versace Pour Homme, which I actually also have a tester bottle right here, the note listing, you will notice that in the top it has black pepper and neroli, which this also has black pepper and neroli in the top. And this has cardamom and saffron in the heart, which, if that sounds familiar, this also has cardamom and saffron in the heart. So it's sort of like they just kind of took the top of Versace Man and the heart of Versace Man, and they were like, screw it, we're just going to make a new base in Versace Pour Homme Oud Noir. They just sort of built a new base, which I think they added things like oud, frankincense, patchouli, and leatherwood, okay? But, and there's a bitter orange note here, which there is no bitter orange here, but there's neroli, which is distilled from the bitter orange tree. So really, I really think that this was the inspiration. Even though this is discontinued, you can still get Versace Pour Homme Oud Noir at discounters sometimes for 40 or $50. So you can still get this for a respectable price. But yes, I mean, sorry for the voice today. Sorry to sound like Marge Simpson. I hope you guys could hear me. I did not want to wait and wear this again because there's so much more I still want to wear and discuss on the channel. But I really thoroughly did enjoy wearing this as my scent of the day. It falls squarely into the discontinued gem fragrance category for me. Hope everyone gets a chance to smell this that wants to. And do leave your feedback. Love seeing the comments. You know, we're coming up on 10,000 subscribers very soon. Cannot wait for the 10,000 subscriber celebration video we'll be doing. Have no clue what I'm going to do yet. If you have ideas, leave it in the comments. As always, it's a pleasure, guys. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.